And now to set the stage for our discussion this morning on millennials in the workplace. Kenya's quest to increase its manufacturing output is in danger of running out of steam as millennials rank engineering as one of the least conducive professions to work in. A survey of millennials by Brighter Monday reveals that engineering and retail are the bottom two professions as far as best working conditions are concerned, while working for non-governmental organizations and in the financial sector are ranked at the top. Alex Mwaniki with the details.
When it comes to handling the millennials who spend on average just 2 years at a job, employers and human resource professionals find themselves facing a dicey situation.
Today's challenge is that there's a disconnect between the way organizations are structured and the aspirations or expectations of the millennial worker.
A survey of over 8,000 urban Kenyan millennials by Brighter Monday finds that millennials think non-governmental organizations offer the best working conditions, followed by working in the financial sector, IT or technology space, media and communications, sales and marketing, education and training, engineering, and then retail. The survey reveals the challenge that the government faces in encouraging youth to become engineers, even as growth of the manufacturing sector is considered as one of the big four agendas. The government is hoping to spur the growth of manufacturing from the current contribution of 9% of GDP to 15% by 2022.
Mi dream yangu ilikuwa kuwa soja.
My dream nilikuwa nataka kwenda kufanya hospitality.
According to the survey, millennials are putting more emphasis on the social value that employment creates rather than the remuneration package offered. With evolving technology, there are new professions emerging, and parents of some millennials often find themselves having difficulty to understand what exactly their children are up to.
I think the most important thing is to actually give them and support them in these new form of jobs, because I think those are the future jobs that we may not think are good jobs for the moment, but they are jobs that, of course, they are required for productivity in the future.
Research shows that by next year, half of the formal workforce will be made up of millennials. Alex Mwaniki, NTV.
Thank you very much, Alex Mwaniki, for that story that focuses on millennials and the digital working space and some of the issues that employers are now having to deal with in terms of absorbing this new demographic into the workplace. And we're joined by a panel here which will help us discuss some of these things. We have Stella, who is an actress, as well as a film student and also a millennial, more importantly for this conversation. We have Mwaniki, who is the country director for Andela, which has been featured prominently in terms of working with millennials and providing a conducive working environment. We have Watima, who will help us give an economic perspective to what this means for the labor market and in terms of productivity from the economy. And we have Joseph Kago, who is also a millennial, to help us just navigate this conversation. And to kick it off, just to look at some of the issues highlighted in this report, we are looking at the most preferred working spaces. We're talking about the NGO world, we're looking at financial services, and we're looking at ICT as well. Mwaniki, if I could start with you. Is this something that takes you by surprise, or this was expected?
I think you have to look at where companies are feeling the most active to invest in, the young millennials. If you look at the ICT sector, for example, everybody knows Silicon Valley was probably one of the areas that people say if you go there, you find the sort of most, I wouldn't call it worky, but interesting workspaces. People investing in workspaces that capture the imaginations of young people. And I think the drive behind that is the realization that young people, they're not just driven by the need for a high salary. They want to have experiences. And the sectors that have found themselves investing more in that talent or in how to capture that attention of that talent find themselves being the most preferred. And I think that's why the report is sort of showing that these are the areas where you might find they invest more, while other sectors still feel that they are the people that hold the straw. So people should come and say, I want to work there. But millennials are choosing where they want to go. They're like, if I don't like what it is to work in your place, I won't come and work there. Okay. And I think that's why you see it like that.
All right. And Stella, just to swing to you, one of the things that Joshua has mentioned, which are also in the report, is that looking beyond the question of a remuneration, a good salary, one of the things that millennials are keen about is the working environment. From the actress perspective, what are some of the demands that you normally have when you're scouting for opportunities?
First things first, I would like to say that millennials, we are woke, as in we don't just go for what we want, we actually go for what we feel we deserve. You know, like when it comes to the acting industry, I will choose so many actors. Okay, tumekuwa tukiona unaonekana kwa TV but uko nje hauna place ya kulala nini. But if you get someone who's willing to actually invest, like he said, invest in their talents, if you get someone who is willing to invest into your acting and actually pay you well, then I'll definitely go for that.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Tony Watima, one of the issues highlighted in this report is that the millennials coming into the workforce don't have much patience in terms of staying at a job. 2 years and pretty much they're out.
Yeah.
From a labor productivity standpoint and how this rolls down into the wider economy, what are some of the thoughts you could share with us?
Thank you for having me, Julians. I think in terms of labor, the labor market itself, you see that transition under 2 years, 3 years. It gives, especially employers, it doesn't give them the leeway that you can invest in people for a long time if you're planning for your company. So that turnover creates a problem, but not a serious problem. I think the biggest problem that employers maybe will want to look at is how do you entice millennials to stay in a job more than 3 years? What are the incentives that you give them? I think the problem might be that you're not giving them the best incentive that they're looking at in terms of looking at the traditional way that employers used to look at people and today the modern way in which millennials try to tap the labor market. So I think the biggest ball will be on the employers themselves on how do you incentivize millennials to stay beyond the 3 years that they normally transition. Yeah.
Okay. So Joseph, Tony is talking about the work environment and how employers should be dynamic in terms of accommodating millennials. One of the key highlights of the report is that characteristics of millennials is that they're tech savvy, they're not rigid, they're entrepreneurial, and they're risk takers. From where you sit as a millennial and when you're scouting for opportunities, do you feel there is accommodation of some of these traits that define millennials when you're going to look for space in a working environment?
All right, thank you. Really, the current corporate world is very unwelcoming to most of the millennials because we're coming in a space whereby there are already structured rules, there are already ways of doing things, and a normal millennial doesn't want micromanaging. A normal millennial wants to have autonomy. Autonomy in the sense that we want to know that we're doing something. One, we want actually, the actual issue with millennials is we want a job that is part of our passion. If we can make our passion our job, then that would mean that you'd have to pay us for what we can do for free. Now, the autonomy bit is we want to do what we want, when we want it, how we want it, and preferably with whom we want it. Yes. And that kind of structure is not really in the corporate world at the moment. Yes. Definitely.
Thank you. And Mwaniki, just to bring you back on that point which is talking about that there is a bit of rigidity, and one of the issues highlighted in the report is the desire to work remotely. How do you feel this is impacting the conventional, if I could call them mainstream workspaces, now that are taking up millennials as a big chunk of their workforce?
Yeah, and actually before I come to it, I want to touch on something that Tony talked about. And I think this is just something that we've realized, because he said, how does an organization try and get millennials to stay for more than 3 years? I think if you think like that, you're probably already failing. I think what you need to realize is millennials are very mobile. They will move. And I think the thing is, how do I maximize the time that I have with these individuals who after 3 years just want to get out of the door. They don't want to stay anymore. And that's what you have to sort of align your company to say, these guys are going to come in, you're going to have like 36 months with them. How do you get the maximum? If after the 36 months they want to stay, yeah, maybe 20% might stay, but most of them will say on to the next adventure. And I think that's just a start. But in terms of things like the remote working, that is the future of work. A lot of companies do not understand that the competition has shifted. Talent is the main game. Companies around the world know that technology has advanced to the point that I could hire people from Kenya to work for companies in Australia. So the millennial knows I'm not competing with this company in Nairobi and that company in Nakuru. I could work for an Australian company and work remotely, work from my house and earn a much higher salary than going to that job. And so as the company, if you're not willing to say, hey, I want to see you at your I'll let you work from home, and instead I want to see you at your desk, but I'm not actually measuring your productivity, I think you'll see them beginning to say, this is probably not for me. I don't want to feel like I have to come, sit at my desk, work here, while they want to be measured on their output. So I feel it's more about understand who you're competing with, what the environment is like, that the technology has changed the future of work. It's now distributed. People want to work from home, and they should be able to do that if they can.
Okay. And just as a quick rider to that point, because one of the things that I found a bit intriguing about the report is that whereas it mentions there is a desire for this remote working and flexible work hours, majority of the respondents indicate that if they have to meet a deadline, they are more comfortable working from a confined office space. And just to bring in on this discussion, when you are faced with such tasks and you have to meet deadlines, would you rather be working at an environment which is defined, or would you rather have that remote flexibility that you can work from home or elsewhere?
There's this thing called safe space, and I feel like when you're alone, there are less distractions, and it's easier when you have a deadline. It's easier for you to work at a place that, you know, it's not ati lazima ukue hapa and ufanye kazi 24/7. You can work from home, and you can actually, it's easier that way.
Still deliver.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and just to get Watima's sense around, when you look at the structure of our economy, when the number of jobs we create, and predominantly in the informal sector, do you feel the Kenyan economy is well prepared in terms of absorbing millennials and with the demands they have in terms of a tech-savvy environment, somewhere where ICT is quite advanced in terms of accommodating their needs? Do you feel that we have that room for accommodation of these demands that we face?
I'm not sure about, I've not read the report. So I will not look at, I'm not sure on what specific tier in the labor market we are looking at, if you are analyzing this. Because if you talk about creating jobs which are tech savvy, which are those people who opt out of corporate world, that's the top tier, and there are very few people there. In Kenya, we have around 2.5.
And we swing back to our conversation where we're discussing millennials in the work environment. And before we move to State House, we were with Tony Watima, who's an economist, looking into some of the dynamics that impact in terms of the labor market. Kenya produces a huge percentage of the jobs created are in the informal sector. And we were asking, how is it that millennials are now supposed to fit in, given their traits of being tech savvy, being agile, they're quite dynamic? How do they fit into this space?
Oh, I can't remember where I was last time, but one of the main things that we'll want to look at when you're looking at millennials and the job they create is that generally in Africa and sub-Saharan Africa, one job creates 3 indirect jobs. So when you talk about millennials having this tech-savvy kind of jobs that they're looking for, whether in the remote places or distributed jobs, does it still hold that out of that one job, 3 are directly created? So those are the dynamics that we are yet to see in terms of analysis. But the biggest problem that we have is that we create more jobs in the informal sector, and these are not high earning jobs. So that's the problem that we have in our economy. It's a structural problem. You talk about the millennial jobs and the tech-savvy jobs. Those are jobs that are a little bit in the higher tier. So we are yet to see that a big number of Kenyans moving from that low cadre of informal sector, moving to a high-pay earning jobs.
And just to bring you back onto this, he's talking about the structuring in terms of the jobs. And what we have is a scenario whereby you'll find millennials are increasingly being compelled to have what we call the gig economy. You have your main job, and then you have a number of side jobs which help you meet your bills at the end of the month. From where you sit, how do you feel this balance is faring on for this particular demographic? By that I mean the millennials, in terms of having to deliver on your main job as well as running your side jobs on the side?
At the end of the day, most millennials, yeah, we want to, social media will be the end of us, number one. That's one thing that I can say. We want to be like other people. When you're in campus, you take loans. Yeah, you are not told at oh, you take loans because unataka ku, you know, unataka kupati, unataka kuwa na do ukiwa kampo. But then after, you have to pay for that loan, and you have your main job. But your job yenye uko nayo, the moment unaingia job, you don't uingiangi immediately unaanza kulipwa salo venye unafaa kulipwa ni nini, but it's unenanga ukilipwa pole pole, salary inenanga ikiongezeka. But then when you have other jobs, you're able to meet other needs, and even if yes kuna hiyo percentage yenye itakatwa from your main company where you're working, the other jobs alafu this other one, your main job, you're never sure. Unaweza amka wambe usikuje job leo, or inaweza tuisha wambe tu contract yako nivo imekuwa terminated. But with your other jobs, even if you're fired from this one place, you have other things to fall back on. And you can still continue paying your bills, you can still continue paying for your loans, you can support yourself, because kitu yenye, at the end of the day, there's no one who wants to leave campus and then still move in back with the parents, because washakusomesha, so why you're coming back home so that you can still continue depending on them and whatnot. We still have to you know, be independent, and we want to gain more experience, because at the end of the day, when I come to you and tell you that I want a job as this and this, but I've also done this and this and this and this and this, so I have my resume looks really, really nice because I have done so much more. But when I have just done one thing, and then from there I have to look for another company that will employ me to do the same thing that I was doing there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Joseph, she mentions a sense of security, in the sense that your main job could easily be terminated and you need something to fall back on. Do you feel that you normally get that security when you're looking for, or at the point at which you are? How do you view this environment?
Well, really, there's no job security in the corporate space that we're in, majorly because, you see, we live in a very interesting society whereby it's highly competitive. It's highly competitive and very demanding of us. So we've just cleared campus. You want to join the corporate, the working space. But as much as we want to be in a particular company and get, you know, to get to connect and all, these people are taking us as interns. You're taking us as contractors on contractual modes and all. So by the time I'm getting in, I'm just feeling like, you know, I'm not really needed here. I'm just a, you know, just a laboratory in that kind of a space. Therefore, it becomes very difficult to know exactly that I have job security. That is what they don't assure us. So that's why I would have plan A, probably to Z, such that if this one does not work, plus what I've just said, money is not our end goal. Money to us is a symbol of achievement, yes, because we live in a society with too many demands, and they want to see that you've actually achieved. You have a house, you have a car, you have, you know, you're progressing. Money is not the end goal. The reason why we'll have the side jobs and all is because meaning is also very important to us. We want to ensure that we can love and enjoy what you're doing. That is why I will have a white-collar job, but on the side I do DJing, I do voiceovers, I do this and this stuff. Because the greatest resource to us is not just money, but also time. Yes.
Yeah, so on that note, where Joseph is telling us that money is not the end game, there are a number of incentives which are supposed to help lure millennials into the workforce. We'll be taking a short break, but we'll be right back with more details on this discussion of millennials in the work environment. Back to our discussion on studio, where we are focusing on millennials in the work environment. And we have just been sharing on some of the constraints that companies are facing in terms of meeting the demands of millennials. One of their key focus that was highlighted in the report published by Brighter Monday yesterday was the demand for training and development to advance their skill sets. And Joshua, I've just been sharing with you some of the challenges that companies are raising, that budgets are strained. The economy is a bit adverse especially from an SME standpoint, the small and micro medium enterprises. How do companies begin to meet this demand for training and development in the face of strained budgets?
Yeah, and I think Tony had touched earlier on a really good point in terms of companies also stressed that if I go into training these individuals and they're going to be with us for a short time, it's almost like throwing away money. Let's look at the pipeline of where these individuals are coming from. When people look at the colleges and the universities, today, not just in Kenya, but in very many countries around the world, people are finding that the gap between where the graduates are coming out of university or college and where the employers need them to be is vast. And it's because there doesn't seem to be a good linkage between what companies and employers are saying, this is what I need, and what the universities are training for. So that is why the sort of pressure to invest more and more in training exists. It's why companies like Andela have come into the picture, because we're trying to bridge that gap by ensuring you get people and layer that extra needed training on top of that. But I think what we'll begin to see is more companies beginning to realize that, hey, that investment angle that needs to get in needs to be more closely tied with universities and colleges. And for millennials, I think there's an opportunity, because there's a lot of different ways that you can invest in yourself. Talent is the most in-demand resource. You know, access to capital used to be a thing, but companies are now competing for the best talent. So if you invest yourself in talent, to Joe's point where you're saying, I'm worried that I might not have a job, if you do come out and people realize this is a really high performer, this is a self-starter, this is somebody who invests in their own learning, you might find that that is the thing that makes sure you don't have to worry about where's my next paycheck is going to come from, because everybody will be trying to get you to work for them. Yeah.
And Tony, just to take a rider from what Josh has said, that companies are facing that dilemma that, one, these people will not stay with us for 2 years, 3 years. So if you train them and then they transition into a different place, then that is almost throwing money. And then there's the issue he mentions of the desire and the need for self-training. And yet the millennials, being just starting out, might not have adequate resources to facilitate that. How does one meet this challenge?
I think it's a bigger challenge looking at the bigger picture of the economy. But what Mwaniki says here, there's a little bit of difference that we have, because and when somebody comes out of university, a university is an academic institution, so you acquire academic qualifications. So when you go to the workplace, that's a professional qualification that is needed. So the gap here between is finding professional training. That professional training is done by people like Andela now. And so that gap needs to be filled by people who can tap into that market. Companies are moving away because it's expensive investing in training and learning and development. Many companies have learning and development department, but it's expensive to do that. So unless you're training somebody that you know you will hold him for 10 years or something, then you get your returns back. So companies are moving away because many people, the retention rate is low because many people move out. So we need to find a way that how do we people, like Mwaniki says, you self-train, but are people coming in also to tap into this market of professional training of millennials getting into the job market? So it's a feeder that you're feeding people into the market itself. So we need people now to come into that sector also to fill that gap.
In the traditional working environment, there used to be this provision whereby a company will offer you training and then they tell you, in exchange for this, you will stay with us for about 2-3 years. Do you feel there's still space for this kind of arrangement?
I think in the corporate world it still works. Many in Kenya especially, many companies do that because they've invested in you and they expect that their return on investments in training you will mature maybe in 5-10 years, and they tie down to that. But on the other side, below the corporate world, it's very hard to tie down because it's very expensive also to tie down somebody, because there are other people who get loans, you get car loans, you get mortgage, you get a number of things that are incentives for you to stay in that company. So you find that people who can't afford out of the corporate world, it's very hard for them to retain talent. So that's why you see people moving at that sector.
Okay. And just moving away from that and switching to the discussion around communication channels. This is one issue that was really highlighted in the report. And just to bring Anne into this, 98.5% of the respondents indicated that getting feedback from their employer is a key motivator towards their performance. And beyond that, just having an open door policy where he might be the managing director, but I easily walk into your office, even as an intern. Do you feel that you find this environment existing in workspaces?
Communication is very, very, very important. And to make grow kwa world enye, we are awarded, yeah, for even if you come last. It's not just the first person who's always awarded, yeah. When you come last, you're like, congratulations, you participated, here's your certificate, you didn't get the trophy, but next time you can work hard and get a trophy, you know? So, tumelelewa kwa hiyo world ya congratulate you for every little things that we do, tuna make you to feel special. So as an employer, when you recognize the little things I've done, I will definitely stay. I will definitely stay because I'll feel really, really appreciated. And the fact that I am able to come and say exactly how I feel to kitambo huko unaweza kuambia mzazi wako ati oh umenikosea hapa na hapa na hapa. No, you would have been beaten. But saizi, as millennials, we are outspoken. We have Twitter, we have Instagram and whatnot. So if I feel like I have something to address, I should not be scared and be scared that you're my manager, you're my boss, I can't tell you this. If I feel like instead of us doing this thing the way we are doing it, if we do it this way, then we'll be able to make you guys get more in terms of profit and whatnot. If I've seen something that I feel like I can fix, I should not have it in my, you should not look at me and see that I am an intern or I am a millennial, because they have this notion that millennials are lazy, millennials are entitled. They should just, you know, listen to me first. So if I walk in, don't treat me at, wait, intern, unafaa kuendea chai sahi, you should not be here. No, allow me to participate. Yeah. Let me come in, even if you guys are having a meeting, let me just come in and listen to how you guys, what you guys are saying. Can you just listen to me and know me as a young person? Because at the end of the day, you guys will step down. You guys are older. You will get older, and who will take in the position? It's us. Yeah. So why not include us in everything?
Okay. Yeah. And Joseph, just to bring you on the same, your views around the communication environment created in working spaces and what she says critically on participation in decision making. Do you feel you're incorporated enough in the key decisions?
All right. Probably just to begin, the millennials are very relationship based. We're not mechanical. We don't like serving a system that sounds dead and doesn't service us back. We want to be in an environment that it's relationship based. We just don't want to be heard. There's also, there's also a silent desire to be guided. Now, when there's this disconnect between us and the boomers and the older generations, we want to be in spaces whereby, simply because we can't be given a platform to air our views, to air our creative and innovative ideas, we feel suppressed. Therefore, there's no that healthy mode of communication. In leadership positions and in many circles, we're not allowed in because it's a society that regards us based on the titles we have. Why would you have an intern? Why would you have someone on contractual basis sitting in management positions? No one is really looking at what exactly do you have inside beyond the papers you brought us? We're all being hired for our IQ, but what should make us sit on those leadership settings, not even really to even probably just air out anything, but no one is looking for the emotional quotient. In fact, you're not keeping us because our IQ is okay, it earns us an interview, but our EQ can't make us sustain the job. Yes, because we want to be in a space whereby we can be heard, but also be guided.
Yeah.
Yes, but there's already a stereotype that has already shunned us away.
Okay.
Yes.
Mwaniki, Joseph talks about a silent desire to be guided. And one of the issues highlighted in the report by Brighter Monday was that mentorship is viewed as one of the areas which the millennials rather, would like to receive a lot more focus on but doesn't really meet their demands as is presently structured. What are some of the avenues through which you feel corporates or companies could now plug into this mentorship gap?
Yeah, and I think ties to your discussion around, like when they were saying communication. Young people want to follow leaders. I think Africa especially has had, big man mentality. You get into an organization and you know when the boss arrives because it goes quiet, and people are like, I want to be able to feel like I can talk to leaders. I want to have leaders who can not just communicate with me, but, like help mentor me to get better. I think the biggest avenue is use your own staff first. Like the culture of mentorship has to be something that is actively rewarded by leaders of organizations. And they don't just have to reward that, they actually have to lead the way. So, I'll mention one of the big CEOs, when Bob Collymore came in with Safaricom, and people would see him in music videos and things like that, and people wondering, what is he doing? But he was redefining what leadership looks like, which makes it easier for people to say, if I'm working in an organization like that, how do I model myself as a leader here in the way I engage with my staff and other people? And I think you're beginning to see that across the country. More companies, you said financial sector and other NGOs, people are doing this. So create deliberate steps and rewards for people within your organization who can mentor, and allow your employees to actually seek mentorship opportunities, not just within the organization, but outside of the organization. I think those are the things that create that stickiness that says, this is why I want to be here. We do that a lot. We actually reward our employees at Andela for mentoring. We actually have active mentorship principles that reward people for saying you, and responsibilities. If you don't mentor, you don't get as high a grade as you would. So I think more people doing this kind of thing is what drives the point home of this is an important part of doing your job.
One of the recurrent challenges that we normally get thrown our way as media is that a lot of this, the mentorship you're talking about, is structured in the private sector. On the public side, we still have, even at the face of it, very old folks leading particular institutions. Tony, do you feel the public sector is lagging behind in this arena of bringing on board millennials and mentoring them to take up positions?
Yeah, that's true. Public sector, the way it works, it's somebody, the tenure is very long. You find that guys have been there for 30 years and all that. So the systems and structures are still the same. So the top tier of management, you will find, is a different generation than the millennials. So having your voice heard at that level becomes a problem. The reason why it works in private sector is because these are profit-driven. So if you're a millennial and you have a space that you can give an opinion or give an idea, it will be ready to be taken up. But there is no incentive or a drive in public sector on why we should listen to other people who have better views from us. So the structure itself is that the top management itself is the main people who are controlling it, rather than accommodating other people outside, because the key performance indicators are different compared to the private sector. So that's the biggest problem that we have in the public sector itself.
Yeah. Back to our conversation in studio where we were focusing on millennials and the work environment. And one of the issues that was emerging was the private sector might be structuring itself around the mentorship programs that are desired, but the public sector is lagging behind, yet there are millennials who are looking for opportunities on that side. And Mwaniki, you are sharing some views on this.
Yeah, we were actually just talking, Tony and the guys during the break, and the feeling and the perception is that the public sector, a lot of people in there rise through patronage. You have to have somebody who helps you get up the ladder. And most people in the private sector build meritocracies. So based on your merit of what you do, you go up. That means the motivation for you in the private sector is, I need to get better to climb the ladder. Yes, there might be elements of patronage, but it's mostly a meritocracy versus the public sector, where people might get in saying, I need to figure out how to get the right people to be friendly with me and increase. So it's not going to have a focus of mentorship. It's more about strategic links versus this other side where it's like getting better. So I feel, just to add to what Tony was saying earlier, was that might be one of the other reasons why you might not see as heavy a focus on things like mentorship in the public sector. But I look at that as an opportunity to change that, because things are changing fast. And we were just talking with Joe during the break. Millennials have the biggest opportunity in a very fast changing world, having grown up with everything around them changing fast, to have the biggest impact. So that is just a huge opportunity for them to get in and be impactful.
And to move away from mentorship, and as we begin the tail end of our conversation, just focusing on one of the issues highlighted in the report, that addressing the gender gap is a key issue for most millennials. And the report highlights the fact that gender is just beyond having women, a particular proportion of women in the office. They want them in particular positions of leadership. And do you feel this issue is receiving adequate focus in terms of addressing the gender gap as a key factor attracting millennials into a work environment?
I feel like times have changed. Men are no longer intimidated when they walk into an office and they find that their boss is a woman. Times have really, really changed. And I think at the end of the day, as a millennial, when I go into a place, I want to run things. I want to be, on top. I also want to nataka pia mimi ndo nasema, and I feel like tumefika place yenye si lazima ukwe dem ama chali ndo weze ku attend some things. Times have changed in terms of things like you have to, let's say, you have to give certain favors for you to acquire a certain position. Kitambo ilikuwa ni madem, ati for you to get this job, you need to do this and this and this. Nowadays, even guys too. So see, girl child peke yake anakuwa affected, but pia boy child pia yako na shida. Yeah, so imechange, yeah.
Joseph, on the same?
I think, as I said, our greatest need is not just to be part of a system. We want to belong, in every sense of the word. By that I mean, I don't want to feel discriminated on whatever grounds, whether it's by gender, my age bracket, I'm a millennial. I just don't want to be discriminated. So when you offer that platform whereby we are all equal, they can be able to access, as I said, it's a very competitive kind of space, the corporate world at the moment. It's a very competitive kind of space. So if she qualifies more than I do, then that's okay. I would actually be contented if she took, or rather she got an opportunity whereby her performance or her qualifications were more than mine. The only issue now comes in, as Mr. Mwaniki is saying here, where we have to get in through connections. Campus is crazy. You're there, and then the people who will never attend classes, they're ever having connections out there. Then once you just leave, you get a totally different kind of, I mean, when you're struggling with even your first class, you probably did a science course, and your first place of work is some factory somewhere dealing with probably bread. They were never in class, but because of just connections and all, it's just about who you know and all, you see them rising. Yeah.
Okay. And Mwaniki, Joseph has just widened this discussion of addressing and bringing parity in the environment. And one of the things that I found strange about the report is that it says that only 27% of the respondents would desire childcare assistance when you discuss the subject of family support. I would have expected that proportion to be larger. I found it to be significantly low. I don't know what thoughts you had around the same.
Look, I think the government did something interesting. I think it was last year when they passed a law that is now mandating employers to have rooms to allow nursing mothers to be able to, prepare for nursing and things like that. I don't know a good word for that, so excuse me. But this is one of the things. You're beginning to find companies like ourselves and other companies saying, we're going to build fully fledged creches that allow people to bring children to the workplace in case they're stranded, because this is a reality of why somebody will say this is not a conducive work environment. When I tell my boss I have a family emergency, they look at me and go like, what's going on? And sometimes I think reports like this might not understand, or they might not point to the fact that sometimes people might view you saying I might need support as a weakness. And this is actually just a fact of life. Like, this is part of what you have to do if you're getting into into the family way. So I feel it's just increasing the level of comfort that we have to admit such things. And number two, sorry to get too long, but number two, I think the millennials have a very interesting potential to change this mindset, because they've grown up watching TV that shows a lot more parity, while maybe people from different generations, when you saw a boss on TV, it was always a man. A carpenter was always a man. And they don't have those things. They're watching things that are showing a lot more parity. So their acceptance of these things as they get into the workplace is a lot higher. And I think that it's not just the opening up of jobs and things like that. It's how do you change the mindset as well.
Yeah. Tony, on this issue of parity and creating a conducive environment in terms of family accommodation, in terms of leave, employers will often table the argument that they find themselves straddling a very tightrope, in the sense that we have productivity to meet here, and here you are demanding, for example, you said an emergency just cropped up and you want to be away for about 2 weeks. How do I meet productivity? And the counter argument they always give is there are many people willing to work out there. Do you feel the structure of the labor market is an impediment to some of these things?
Okay, let me answer one thing about the gender parity issue. The problem that we have is that even the women that get into top management of these companies are quite old. They've aged up in a while and they've gained experience. That's why they end up there. We have a problem that millennials don't have that chance. So we need to create a structure where these are the mentorship, the women in management can offer a ladder for women to come up as millennials on how do you structure yourself and move up the ladder. You talk about NSE, Nairobi Stock Exchange companies, has a 20%, I think, quota that women have to be represented in the management. It's yet to be implemented. It doesn't even, companies have not met that quota. So these are the structures that we need, and then you try to scale up moving forward. But in terms of the labor market, the question that you're asking is that the labor market is a complex one, and it's very hard to find a way that it feeds many people. Companies look at themselves on how do we gain itself. We don't structure our market for the labor market itself. Because you find, like in Kenya, you talk about the top 100 companies. Many of the people will want to work there. So companies feel that it's for them to come to us. It's not us to structure ourselves in terms of attracting this talent. And that's the problem that we have in the corporate world. People are in a comfort position that they don't look at what exactly can other people outside there, that we can attract other talents, rather than them coming to us. So it's a reverse that we're having in the labor market itself, especially in the corporate world.
All right. And Anne, just to come back to you, one of the issues that the report brings forth is the need for collaboration over competition as a key factor that millennials now look at. If you're taking them into a workspace, they want an environment which fosters more of collaboration than competition between us as colleagues. Do you feel this is an adequate, a fair representation by the report from where you sit?
It's actually true. Millennials prefer collaboration to competition, because it's easier for us to work when we know that I can count on you, I can talk to you, I can share my idea with you, and you won't take it to the boss as your idea, but we will work together and make this idea better. So when it comes to, because we are always competing, from classes to, let me say, when it comes to our homes, kuna firstborn, secondborn, thirdborn, you still have to compete for attention in the house. We are always competing. When it comes to maybe love life, you want to be the only one. but when it comes to work, it's easier for us to collaborate and not to compete. People say that women tend to compete, and when you prefer making someone ashuke chini ndo wewe upande, ukanyage mtu ndo upande. So it's easier when we work together for that whole story about women and in management and whatnot. If they mentor other women, it will be easier compared to you look at another woman as someone who's going to take your job and actually do it better than you. So yeah, collaboration is actually, we prefer collaboration to competition.
Joseph, collaboration over competition?
All right. I'd actually say both. In this sense, in the question of achievement, we're wired in a way that we'll do practically anything, whether through competition or through teamwork, to actually get there. in the question of achievement. Like I want to get there, I want to rise to this level, I want to acquire this kind of stuff. So competition is not necessarily bad in the sense that I'm trying to outdo you. But competition is important in the sense that I'm trying to package myself in a better package that makes me get at least opportunities that place me in a better place than you are. Now, in terms of the other was
of competition, collaboration.
Collaboration. Now, collaboration. Collaboration. In the question of meaning, we want to, when we're working for something that we are trying to make it a passion. We want to make our passion the job. In that kind of space, we best work in the place of teamwork, because I don't need to be everything. I'm just trying to create my own niche in the market. If I can be noticed for one particular thing, if I can outstand in one particular thing, I don't need to be everything. So, for example, if I'm an event organizer, all right, in the past they would need to be everything. They would need to know practically everything. But if I can just be a cameraman and be practically good at it and package myself in a way that I give you space. And as I said, we're very relational, relation-based. So I've gotten a job, then I connect my friend, I tell him, hey, but there's a place to apply. There's a connection. We're really well connected. So it also works very well in cooperation.
And on that note of balancing between collaboration and competition is where we wrap up this conversation on millennials in the digital working environment. We have been joined by Stella, who is an actress and film student as well. We have been joined by Joshua Mwaniki from Andela, Tony Watima, an economist, helping us make sense of how this fits into the wider economy, and Joseph Kago, who is also a millennial. We'll leave